Okay, let's go over the UI. Fairly simple. We have a route here, the gray area. We can click these buttons to visit more routes. We can hover this target molecule, this node, and when we do that, we display the reaction name or the reaction names. On the left-hand side here, we have a molecule list. These are the molecules that are also present in other routes. So, for instance, if we take this molecule right here, this ring, which is this one right here, we see that is present in route 5, which is the route in which we are right now, but also in route 8, 9, 10, 25, etc. Also to notice that the molecules that we see here are all the molecules in the route except the target. So in this case, we have 4 molecules, and these 4 molecules are right here on the left-hand side. Okay, so let's go over now the code fairly quickly. We are in the index.js file, in the source directory, the front-end directory. I have defined some global styles here that I'm going to use throughout the application. We render here the routes. Let's go over the routes. We scroll to the top. We have some styling here with JSS. In this component, we have some local states. Here we have the logic to calculate the routes that will be displayed here for each molecule. We have 2 functions to fetch data. The first one is fetch routes. We fetch the data, the route data to this endpoint with some, we handle some errors. This is a very basic example. Perhaps in a real world application, we can do a lot more. But here I guess it's okay. We also have this fetch SVG function here. We fetch SVGs from this endpoint. We pass in the query parameter, which is the smiles. In this case, I have used the all settled method of the promise API because I think it's much better to fetch these SVGs in parallel. So we will gain some speed by doing that instead of doing one after the other. Also, I have used this method to handle some errors as well. We have 2 use effects. I have separated them here. So we need to call this function only once, and hence is in its own use effect and has no dependencies. So we fetch this function, we call this function only once at the very beginning after the entire routes component is mounted. And then we also fetch this, we fetch the SVGs of a given route. And that's why we have this route here in the dependency array, because every time we go to a different route, we fetch new SVGs. We fetch the relative SVGs. Here is the HTML structure. We have the aside component, which is the list over here on the left-hand side. That includes the molecule list component. And then we have the div here, which is the gray area that is subdivided into the header and the route tree. Going to the header component, we have 2 functions here that are used to click on these buttons here to change the ID of the route and hence display the correct information. a very simple approach. And this is the HTML structure. Now, I was not aware if we could use any external libraries for this project. So to play safe, I decided to use none. And that's why I'm using here the two HTML entities, which are the arrows here to the right and the left. So instead of using icon libraries or downloading some SVGs from the internet. Let's move on. We have the molecule list component, very simple. We have a unordered list of molecules where we display some smiles, which is this one right here, some SVGs, and then other information. Now, we could argue that this is not a good idea, but in this case, I think it's okay because we control the data that we pass in. The data that we pass in perhaps comes from a database. It's not user data. In that case, it will not be okay to use dangerously set inner HTML. And that's why I think for this project, it's okay to do it in this way. But I'm pretty sure there is perhaps a better, more elegant way of achieving this. Let's move on. The route tree. We have a custom function. This is the component. I decided to use local state to achieve the hover effect, which is this one. It was pretty tricky to display the reaction name because it's outside of the node. So I came up with a way of using local states, some JavaScript. It's fairly simple. I think it works pretty well. What else? So let's go now to the custom node function, which is used by this property on the tree. We pass in quite a few parameters, and we are using this foreign object, which is provided by the library. Now, we pass in some props, and specifically the props that we're interested in are the coordinate props, which allow this node to be placed on the page like this. And so a way to achieve this hover effect and display the reaction name was to use another foreign object and put them side by side. So by using this object and slightly changing the coordinate, I was able to figure out where to place this reaction name, and I wanted to be placed on the edges of all the nodes that are involved into the reaction. I have also implemented some tests. Now, I perhaps did not say this before, but I had a pretty busy week at work and I did not have enough time to work on this project. So I should have implemented way more tests, but I didn't have much time, so I implemented just a few. Very simple. So let's go perhaps over the last one or maybe this one. Previous route button is disabled when the route ID is 1. Now, if we click the previous button and we go to route 1, we notice that now is disabled because route 1 is the first route in the list. So, and with this test here, we are testing that. Let's quickly go over the molecule list test. Again, very simple. We're just checking to see that we get some specific text here in the list, and we are checking that this component we can pass in an SVG and it displays correctly. So let's see. I think this is pretty much it. Thanks.